better now because
I
we.
delayed The thing is, as well, when you start using Teams more handsomely, because in Teams, other organisations don't have this. They put all their files into Teams. There's all this like structure. It's really handy.
We do that with some of our
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Telford Wrekin Council's Cabinet meeting, the first physical meeting we've had for over a year. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Telford College for hosting us today, so that we can ensure the relevant social distance rules and regulations are complied with. So thank you to our partner at Telford College for hosting us today. And as always, these meetings are live streamed, so members of the public can access what's going on at these meetings on our YouTube channel and on our Twitter account. Just before we start the meeting proper, are there any apologies for absence?
None received, yeah.
Thank you very much. And any declarations of interest? No. And the minutes of the previous meeting, are they agreed?
Move them, Chair.
Thank you. I shall sign those in due course. Under leaders' announcements, I just want to deal with two issues under this item. The first relates to the Telford Wrekin Council local plan review. We've made the decision to suspend that review due to the gracious speech. I'll ask Councillor Wright to go into the details of our next steps on this.
Well, thanks, Leader. On the 11th of May, as members will know, the government set out its intention to bring forward new legislation that could change the planning system. We've now decided that it's appropriate to wait to see how those legislative changes will change the overall planning system. The stated aim of the government is to completely overhaul the current system, and in particular the way that local development plans are prepared. Now, their changes could include the introduction of a housing requirement figure for local planning authorities, a new land zoning concept for development and other uses, and nationally led development management policies which will impact on how councils will determine planning applications. And this could fundamentally change the role of local planning authorities and the role of planning committees right across the country. It's important now that we consider any details and changes that come forward from the legislation in relation to our local plan review process. This is crucially important so that we get this right for local residents, but also that we don't carry out work in the coming months that may prove to be abortive. There is no clarity at the moment on transitional arrangements for local authorities that have begun a review of their local plan and are at the stage that we are at. So we think it's appropriate to pause the process at this point to see what the legislation delivers and what that looks like when it arrives on the statute book, and then we can consider how to move forward at that stage. So I hope that will give members some comfort that we are considering the approach taken by government, and that we'll do the best for local residents in terms of ensuring that the planning system works for everybody in our town.
I don't usually take points of questions on leaders' statements, but given the importance of this, I will. But just before I ask Councillor Tomlinson for his question, any questions from Councillor Dugmore, I just also want to stress that the elements within the local plan in respect of green guarantee sites and the designation of more local nature reserves, that piece of work will run separately from the local plan review, so that we can continue to protect green spaces and create local nature reserves, more local nature reserves than we've ever had before. Councillor Tomlinson.
I welcome the practical announcement that you have made. It seems to make a lot of sense to me. I want to ask you a question which I don't think you may have the answer to, but I'm hoping you might. Do we know when it's likely the government will actually have the processes in place so we know where we are now? I know sometimes that's like asking how long's a piece of string, but do you have any idea about they normally go out for review and everything else, so are we looking at a year or 2 years away where we might have more, knowledge of where we should be?
Well, can I thank you for that question? The government is saying that I believe that they're timetabling this legislation for the autumn. Clearly they've got to go through the entire parliamentary procedure, so it's our view that it's unlikely that this legislation will be on the statute book before the next calendar year. And clearly we've got to see the content of that final piece of legislation. It may be heavily amended, we don't know, during the legislative process. Clearly the government's laid out some of the broad principles in its recent white papers and consultation documents, but we need to understand clearly how the zoning requirements are going to work, because the zoning of land will determine how planning applications are considered long term in the borough. At the moment, the Plans Board have significant control in relation to applications. Under the government's proposals at present, zoned areas, if a developer meets the development requirements laid out in the guidance, basically they get permission, and we think there are major issues around that. So we have to get this right for local people, and that's why this pause has been proposed.
Thank you. Questions from Councillor Dugmore?
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I fully understand the reasons for the delay, and I'm glad that the green space is not going to be adversely affected on that. I'm just a bit concerned about you know, it could be, as Councillor Tomlinson's intimated, it could be sort of a never-ending delay, and therefore, you know, sort of there could be future problems, particularly on, for instance, contracts or financial investment in the borough. So is there a plan in place if this legislation gets delayed for any reason?
I want to say in response to that obviously, and it's really important that people understand that we do have a local plan in place until 2031, and that local plan will continue in the way in which it is set out to be. So we're not in a situation where we do not have a local plan. We are just announcing the pausing of the review of the existing local plan. But I think to answer your question head on, Nigel, the government have stated, this is not a party political thing, it's just fact, the government has stated that they've got an ambition to build 300,000 homes every single year, and if they're going to deliver on that, then they're going to have legislation around the planning system. So I wouldn't anticipate we're going to be in a situation where there's a never-ending delay on this, but we do of course need to understand what is the fallout from the rules that are being set by government. If the government have got a plan for 300,000 houses every single year, and they're looking to give targets to local authorities, then we need to understand what that target the government are going to set us, how realistic that target is, and then how we can link that into a local plan review. Otherwise, we are literally going to be in a situation where we're playing catch-up once that new legislation comes in. I don't want to sort of prolong this because it's under leaders' announcements, and I don't normally take questions on leaders' announcements. The final thing I wanted to say is a big thank you to Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service for their fantastic efforts on the Ketley fire. They have worked tirelessly over the last 4 weeks to bring that fire firstly under control and then out. The advice that we received as a council in respect to that fire was that it would burn for 12 months without the intervention of the council and the Environment Agency. And that's why this council, despite the criticism levelled at us by our political opponents, invested £200,000 to bring this fire under control and out in this timely fashion. And let me be very clear, let me repeat what I've already said on the public record 3 times already. We will robustly go after any person or any company or any organisation that we can claim that money back from. People will be aware, no doubt, that the Environment Agency have now got 2 individuals in court in respect of the lead up to the 2017 incident, and I know that the Environment Agency are looking at the incidents that took place post 2017 to understand what, if any, regulation or prosecutions can follow. The site has now been handed over to the Environment Agency and to DEFRA, and DEFRA and the Environment Agency needs to come forward with an urgent plan around the future of this site. And we as a council will work with them, but it is for them to bring forward a plan and to consult with local residents and businesses about that plan. And I think for some people they saw a fire. Unfortunately for others they saw a political football to be used, and the council's made a decision very clearly to work on behalf of residents in that area, which includes me, because I live just up the road from this site, to bring this fire under control. And any suggestion that this council or our council officers have not acted appropriately needs to be backed up by evidence rather than continuous slander that's been being put onto the airwaves of local media. And I think that we need to ensure that the political conversations that take place in this borough always focus on the issues and not individuals, and particularly officers who can't openly and publicly defend themselves from allegations made with very little and no evidence. So that's all I wanted to say on that. We'll move forward then to item 5, which is the Association of Directors of Adult Social Care Services Peer Challenge for us as a council. And I'll hand over, I believe, to Sarah, who's going to introduce this. Andy, is that right? So, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Just before we show a short video, I just wanted to make a couple of points. Recently we had our ADAS peer assessment. The findings are seen in the report that can be noted. I just wanted to pull out 3 points before we watch the very short video. Firstly, the findings were that Telford has exceptional adult social care, operational delivery and partnership relationships. I think that's important. It's external assurance for us as a council that our delivery is solid and described as exceptional. The second point is around the council being continually connected with partners to make sure we do the right thing together for local people, and that our Telford and Wrekin integrated place partnership gives a strong foundation and a governance structure for further integration as we move towards an integrated care system. And then the final point from me is the peer team's acknowledgement of our strong relationships with our people who are expert by experience and receive adult social care services in Telford and Wrekin, and how their voice has been listened to and helped us transform our offer and continues to do so. So, Josh, if you wouldn't mind playing the video, thank you.
I'm delighted to introduce this short video which summarises the feedback we had from our recent peer challenge with Worcestershire County Council. They are a chance to be assessed by others who are in the same position as ourselves and understand the challenges and issues. Also, we find that important learning happens by both those undertaking the assessment and those receiving it. I'm particularly pleased this video shows the thoughts of those assessing our progress from their own lips and shows us in such a positive light. It is a wonderful tribute, I think, to our staff, and for that my thanks and that of my colleagues in the Cabinet cannot be overstated.
You have a very, very strong focus on social care practice and values, and your professional curiosity was very evident and great to see. You're focused as a team on enabling citizens to live independently, and the relationships that you have amongst yourselves as staff, but also with partners in primary care, within community health, within the hospital, at an operational level, as well as with senior managers, were very strong. And your leader is very much a person who embeds the values. She's very committed, you will all know that. And she's very driven by doing the right thing. And it's important as leaders that we set that tone and environment for what we're doing. You've done a lot during COVID to keep connected with your care market. We also talked to some of your customers, your users, carers, your experts by experience. They really appreciated the individual responses by yourselves and by leaders. You've got a really good Live Well Telford website, that's your digital offer. You've got very good staff engagement. You do lots of communication, workshop discussions, leading people and basing transformation on what people tell you matters to them. And you had listened to what people had said, and your response during that time was outstanding, and we were very glad to see some of that. And you work really closely with your housing colleagues within the council and without. You've kept very strong as a team on making sure that you're operating within the values that you would normally, but you've done that during a crisis with all that comes during that time, and absolute credit to you as a team for that.
A massive thank you to all our adult social care staff in Telford and Wrekin, whose professionalism, brilliance, passion and commitment shone through on our recent ADAS peer review. A huge thank you to our key partners from the community, voluntary and health and social care sectors for their collaboration, great partnership working together to improve outcomes for our local people. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to Paula Furnable, the Executive Director for People and DAS at Worcestershire Council, who led the ADAS peer team in their visit virtually to Telford, for sharing their expertise and knowledge and helping us continually improve our service offer.
Thank you, Sarah. Andy?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think the video and the report largely speak for themselves. I mean, it is clearly a tribute, a massive tribute to our staff team and to Sarah Dillon and her leadership team. I suppose what pleases me is that the report shows how we are putting our values into action. I mean, all organisations like to promote and repeat their values. What is important is whether you implement those values in practice, and I think this, more than anything, shows that that's what we're doing. Thus, we've got a determined focus on helping people to live independently in their own homes by building on the support we have in our communities through voluntary organisations, through community organisations, neighbourhoods, friends. We believe in something called co-production, which is involving the experts by experience in designing services. Those are things which we've lent on, which we've developed, which have enabled us to do well through the COVID crisis. And the second thing, I suppose, is relationships. And it starts from, for me, and always had done in my working life, starts from having a happy and committed staff team. And that comes down to leadership. That's the fundamental. You can have all the policies and values that you want. If that isn't there, then it is difficult to achieve these kinds of, impossible to achieve these kinds of outcomes. We've had enormous difficulties, like every local authority, with the care market. But we've managed to deal with those demands despite that, and we've come out with that kind of review of our performance. And just finishing finally, Sarah mentioned that it put us in a good place in terms of some of the changes that are happening with our health and care system at the moment, and I think that's also really important coming out of this. We've got a chance to show that our way of working at local level, at place level, is effective within the new integrated care systems that are emerging. And I think we're already doing that, and I think it gives us a platform to take that further and really influence how that new way of working develops going forward. So thank you for that, and I'll hand back to you, Jill.
Thank you, Andy. Any comments from co members before I take it over for questions? Paul?
Yeah, it's just really positive outcome from a peer review, which I know can be very challenging, both for the team and for partners. What was great to see was the recognition of the partnership working that we have across the board with adult services, and I'm really proud that we're actually putting those things into. And I do know how the experts by experience work, having worked closely with the board, and it's good to see that their voice was loud and clear in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Shirley?
Thank you. Yeah, I think just listening to the feedback in that video, I think some of the words, I mean, the outstanding, and it's a peer challenge by, and I think that's one of the hardest things to get the accolade from, and you know their judgment is absolutely valid and sound, and that gives us great confidence. Some of the words they were using, better caring, our strong partnerships, the professional curiosity, the excellent personal care packages, the response during COVID was absolutely amazing, but we can only achieve these great services through teamwork, and that's what we have. Team Telford, our vision that we asked for our staff to produce, our Protect, Care and Invest, is being delivered right across the borough. Both children and adult services are outstanding. We couldn't ask for any more, and it's a personal thanks to you and your team and the partners you work with. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Nigel? Bill, sorry.
Yeah, from an outsider's point of view, it might seem just like another technical report on a cabinet paper, but it's not. So it's a great accolade for the local authority to achieve this. It really is. And deep down, even though every single resident won't necessarily get perfect care through us, they know that the authority is trying its hardest. and for most people they're going to get better outcomes than they would do anywhere else. So a big thank you to the team for delivering that. It means so much to the people that work here, but also the residents that are living here and are being supported by us. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Nigel?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, the report says it all. Really well done, and congratulations to all the team. Doing really well. And you know, the experts are saying it as well. I'm not an expert. I'm only at the cold face, but I'm beginning to see things changing with the integrated care in just in my little world. So it is actually happening. So well done, and please continue.
Thank you, Nigel. I just want to also thank obviously Sarah, also Jonathan Rowe, but also Andy Burford for the political leadership that he has shown, and Andy's predecessors too, Paul and Arnold and Liz before Arnold, because this has been a 10-year journey for us as an administration from 2011 to turn round this service provision. And the basic test that I always set the council staff and cabinet members is the family and friends test. Really, we all live in this borough as councillors, and therefore is the service provision as good enough for a member of your family or yourself? And if it isn't, then you need to change it so that it is. And I take Bill's point on board that, of course, there will be cases where our care isn't as perfect as one would hope, but that's a continuous improvement point, and we're absolutely committed to continuous improvement. And I know that Andy and I share that vision that this is not the end at all. This is the beginning of a new start, and we're ambitious and we're aspirational. And also, let's be very clear that this should not be able to be done during a time of a huge austerity to local government. You know, there is a adult social care funding crisis in this country, and we are delivering services as best as we can in that context. And if there was more money for adult social care, health and well-being, public health and health integration, we could do even better things. But I think it is good, and it was also nice to have that validation from an external partner. As it happened, a Conservative-run council coming to see us, and I thought that was always a good idea to have a Conservative-run council come in and have a look, because I think that validation's there, and it's solid, isn't it, as a result. So thank you, Sarah, Jonathan, Andy, and all our teams, and we'll make sure that we celebrate this with our staff, who should be rightly proud, together with our partners. Thank you. We'll move on then to item 6, which is building a safer and stronger communities through CCTV. Richard Overton.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to present this report today, Building Safer and Stronger Communities Through CCTV. This is a clear demonstration of our commitment to protect, care and invest to create a better borough. We know that the results of our 2020 Telford Wrekin residence survey, that 77% of residents told us they felt their neighbourhood is a safe place to live. However, we know there are some hotspot areas for crime and antisocial behaviour, and of course areas people don't feel safe. CCTV is part of our toolkit to tackle these hotspots. During the last 12 months, we have invested £800,000 into CCTV enhancement and upgrades across the borough. This means over 400 cameras have been upgraded across 20 individual sites. This state-of-the-art equipment is linked into a new purpose-built and dedicated CCTV control room in Oakham Gates, staffed by police cadets and volunteers. I have seen the control room for myself, and it's a fantastic facility. We now have the high-quality images needed to help detect and deter crime and antisocial behaviour, as well as providing reassurance to our community. Through the power of social media, such images will enable us to engage with our residents to support us and our partners with appeals for information to tackle environment crime and antisocial behaviour. The investment has also enabled us to produce a new number of mobile CCTV cameras that can be deployed as needed into new antisocial behaviour hotspots to tackle things such as fly tipping. Through Safer Streets funding provided by the Home Office, our own £2.5 million Safer and Stronger Communities programme, and the continued financial support from the Police and Crime Commissioner John Campion, we have the opportunity to continue to roll out this infrastructure in priority locations across the borough. Added to that, our partnership working and the community action team model, that means we are working with town and parish councils who have also provided additional funding as part of this service, increasing the number of CCTV cameras in their local area. This administration is clear. It's on its enforcement agenda. We are on the side of our residents. This infrastructure investment will help support that approach by reducing criminal activity and adding to community safety. I therefore recommend Cabinet approve the recommendations put forward in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Overton. Is that seconded by Cabinet Member? Thank you. Any comments or questions from Cabinet Members? Councillor Carter?
I'd like to obviously welcome this investment. Fantastic credit to the Deputy Leader and the team of officers who deliver this, as well as the partnerships you've forged in order to put it into place. Obviously, you mentioned, Richard, that it massive in terms of providing that safety, that reassurance to our residents, and that proactivity in terms of a major tool in fighting and identifying antisocial behaviour and crime. I think the point I'd like to make most is really about the courage to support this investment. At budget time, we sit in the chamber and we know exactly who the members are who support this investment, who support the budget that prioritises this investment. We know across towns and parishes who've joined us in funding some of this, particularly in high street locations, including my own in Wellington. Those members in those chambers who also prioritised precept investment to deliver this. I think those who haven't supported this really need to ask themselves a question. You can't not prioritise people's safety, reassurance, that proactivity in identifying antisocial behaviour and tackling crime. Ultimately, this is what it's all about. And I think it's totally dishonest of some members who then fail to support budgets that prioritise this investment, but then go out to the community and claim that they were responsible for it in the first place. But let's end on a positive, really, really fantastic investment and very, very welcome from residents right across the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Watling?
Yeah, just I've seen the outcome of this policy in my ward, and it does give people confidence that people are caring for them, are looking after them, and are ready to deal with the issues that face their lives. Antisocial behaviour may not seem like a big crime to people, but it's the one that affects people's lives the most. And this policy will actually help us deal with that issue across the borough. Thank you.
Councillor Reynolds?
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to see the report today at Cabinet. There's been a lot of work and commitment by this administration to secure the investment for the CCTV. And it's great that we're actually leading on investing in safer neighbourhoods, protecting, caring and investing in our business communities and residential areas. On a personal level, I can see firsthand the impact this is having and this investment will have on open gates and the value for the businesses across the town. And I know how much our traders and my residents value the introduction of CCTV across the borough. Like Councillor Overton, I've also visited the control room at the place and was very, very impressed by the clarity and quality of the CCTV footage. And I do hope that other town and parishes take up the offer to buy into the service as part of the new Community Action Scheme, to offer extra protection to their residents, and the option of the movable non-static cameras are a real boon to actually enable targeted support where it's needed. So I'd just like to thank all the officers involved in the area of work and fully support this great initiative.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dugmore?
Yeah, I was quite surprised at how many cameras there are. They must be quite well hidden, and you know, sort of, it's great that, and I'm glad that town and parish councils can buy into it. I mean, obviously every area is going to have different requirements, but it's good to be able to actually take part in it should it be required. That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlinson?
Yes, I'm glad that the town and parishes have the options to buy in and purchase, if you like, additional resources, particularly to target the hotspots in their area. And I would just ask a simple question. If town and parish councils that have already joined in with this wish to say, oh, actually it's working great, can we have another one? Is there capacity in the system to add additional cameras on?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the CAP model, as Councillor Carter talked about, is a real good model where people can buy in to both the environmental improvements but also the enforcement agenda, and there was that added value of buying in those mobile cameras, so that offers always there if people need, you know, find a hotspot. But of course, you know, we as a council are keen to find those culprits who are doing these things in these hotspots as well, so we're happy to support that initiative as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's been moved and seconded and had a good airing. I'll take. Well, no, I won't take silence as agreement. Are we all in favour? Are we all in favour? Yeah, I can see your hand. That's brilliant. It's institutionalised by office by cloth teams. Okay, we now go to the final report on the agenda today, which is item 7, which is the annual governance statement. Councillor Ray Evans.
Thank you, Leader. Cabinet, the annual governance statement 2021 outlines how the Council has been adhering to the local code of corporate governance, continually reviewing policies and procedures to maintain and demonstrate good corporate governance, and that it has in place robust systems of internal control. You see this every year. However, this report has a different basis to previous years, given the pandemic and associated dilution of the scope of the internal audit work undertaken in the year. Throughout the year, the majority of council services have been fully occupied, as you know, providing ongoing services using new delivery methods and or directly supporting the most needy and vulnerable in the community, which resulted in fewer audits taking place. As a result, the opinion of the Chief Internal Auditor is based on what internal audit work could be conducted, together with internal audit's involvement in the Council's COVID-19 response, additional assurances from other elements of the assurance framework, and in part on the proven track record of the Council being established and a well-run authority. Over the past year, the pandemic has been the single biggest risk to the Council's achievement of its objectives. It has meant changes to working practices that have required a greater degree of flexibility and risk-based decision-making at lower levels in the authority. However, these changes have been made within the boundaries of good governance, you'll be glad to know. Internal audit's focus in the year has therefore been to obtain assurances that COVID-19 associated risks have been adequately managed, and this has in part been supported by the result of the resident survey, which detailed that 75% of residents responding to the survey stated that they were very or fairly satisfied with the council support provided during the pandemic. In addition, further independent assurance was obtained through the results of the peer review undertaken last year by the Local Government Association. That was in relation to the council, how the council was performing in terms of supporting the community through the pandemic and its leadership and communications. As you will recall, the outcome of the review was extremely positive, with the LGA describing the council's delivery as impressive and noting that the council had delivered a huge amount through its communities thanks to its clear leadership and strong work with partners. It went on to praise the council's commitment as services started to return by finding new approaches rather than defaulting back to the pre-pandemic ways of doing things. So looking forward, the Chief Internal Auditor is assured that the scope of the planned internal audit work for next year will return to the normal levels, the current year. Cabinet, the annual governance statement has been presented to SNT and therefore now requires approval from you and Audit Committee this evening before it can be added to the final accounts.
Thank you. Is those recommendations seconded as per the report? Thank you, Richard. Any comments or questions from Cabinet members? No? Comments of Councillor Dugmore? Councillor Tomlinson?
I just
can't. I'm the young, good-looking ones.
So,
thanks, Phil.
It's all in the eye of the beholder.
Do you want to go first, Nigel?
No, it's not.
No, I just can't understand why you've left the most exciting one to the very last. I'm looking forward to this at the Audit Committee tonight. I can't wait. No, it's a really great report, and well done all the officers that have put it all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigel?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, it's reassuring that there's so much internal governance taking place. The thing is, though, that it's important as a public body that all this governance is actually seen to take place, the perception. So just a couple of examples. We've asked for the requirement of shadow cabinet briefings by council officers. That continues to be denied. Yeah, that would be a very good way of proving that that governance is right the way through the council. The review that's going on between the relationship between APT and the planning committee, that should be nearing completion. It's 5 months, so 5 months since it was announced, and the results of that, once they're made public, will reassure the public that that governance is taking place. Also, we've had news of an announcement regarding the problems with the recent local elections, and that should be made public. Only when these type of things start to be made public can we actually then claim all this openness and honesty, this ethos. Because the thing is that the report states that there's a lot of governance going on internally, but as I keep coming back to it, we've got to make sure that the public perception follows through what's in the internal statement.
Well, thanks, Councillor Dugmore. I am concerned about this continued narrative that you're pushing against council officers, and I think it's really incumbent on you and your group to come forward with the evidence that you backing up the claims that you are making. So, for example, your comments at the council meeting some months ago now, which have not been retracted still, of wrongdoing on behalf of planning officers, was very, very concerning, and we're still waiting for the evidence by you to back up those claims. And the claims that you make are very, very significant. The claims that you make in respect of the Ketley fire on the radio recently, around council officers not passing on details to the Environment Agency, again, I'm still waiting for the evidence of that claim against council officers who cannot, as you perfectly well know, can't defend themselves in public. Take me on, Councillor Dugmore, as the leader of the council, by all means. That's the democracy that we are engaged in. But please don't play council officers into political games, because it's not fair on them, and it simply does you no service as an individual or a person or as a personality. I think you're better than that. If you've got concerns about issues, then please come forward with your evidence to the audit committee, to the monitoring officer, to me as leader of the council, to the chief executive as the proper officer of this council, so that they can be explored. On the point around the shadow cabinet, as you well know, I mean, it's disingenuous you haven't mentioned this today. You're not an alternative administration with 14 councillors, and no, well, so therefore, as an alternative administration, the custom and practice is that you don't have a shadow cabinet. But what you fail to mention is that you receive leaders' briefings on cabinet papers that have come forward. In fact, you've had a briefing, I understand it, at your request on a report that you wanted to be briefed on for today, and that is continuing. You and I have meetings individually on a very full and frank exchange basis, and that will continue. So please be careful with what you're trying to paint a picture of this organisation for purely political reasons, because it does no one any good at all. We have the Local Government Association coming into this council, reviewing our service and our performance and our standards. We have an external auditor. We have an independent internal auditor. We have the Association, the Director of Adult Services coming into this council. We are as open as you can be open as an organisation, and to claim otherwise is disingenuous and dangerous. And I will start calling you out and asking you to provide evidence and taking legal advice about some of your claims, because they are starting to get very close to the wire, in my view. Not against me as an individual, not against the cabinet members of this council, but about officers who come to work every single day and do a good piece of work, and they deserve better from you as leader of the opposition. We've had those recommendations proposed and seconded. Are we all in favour? That's all. Thank you very much. The meeting is now closed. Thank you very much for your time.